This thing claims it can handle streaming, podcasting, gaming, recording, live music, mobile streaming, pretty much everything except making your breakfast. And honestly, whenever a cheap little box promises to do absolutely everything, that's normally where the trouble starts. Because somewhere in the setup, there's usually a weak link. Cheap microphone maybe, terrible routing, bad monitoring, weird software. There's usually something. But this one's actually a bit more interesting than I expected. Welcome to Greybeard Gear, helping you to avoid wasting money on gear you don't need. So let's figure out what this thing actually is and who it's really for. This thing is trying to do a lot. And this is where things start getting interesting, because underneath all the glowing buttons and marketing buzzwords, the actual mixer is surprisingly feature-packed for the money. You've got monitoring controls, EQ controls, Bluetooth, multiple outputs, effects, loopback, and honestly, for music creators or live stream performers, I can absolutely see the appeal of having physical controls sitting right in front of you instead of digging around in soft menus all night. But this is also the point where I think some beginners could get themselves into trouble. Once you start seeing all the inputs, outputs, and phone connections, this stops feeling like a simple USB mic setup very quickly. And this is where I think the marketing gets a little bit misleading, because the product page makes this look like it's plug it in, go live, and job done. But once you start dealing with monitoring, routing, multiple outputs, phone connections, effects, Bluetooth modes, it stops behaving like a simple USB microphone setup very quickly. Now that doesn't automatically make it bad, but it does mean that this thing probably suits somebody who actually enjoys fiddling with audio gear a bit more than the average beginner does. This starts getting complicated a lot faster than the product page admits. Now, weirdly enough, the mixer is probably the strongest part of this whole bundle, because once you understand what it's actually designed for, I can genuinely see the appeal. The microphone, though, that's where the setup starts feeling a bit more like a traditional budget starter kit. And to be fair, that's usually where manufacturers save money in all these all-in-one bundles. The mic is usable, but this is definitely where the budget part starts showing. Now, to be fair, I don't actually think the microphone is terrible for what this bundle costs. If you're sitting reasonably close to it, in a fairly quiet room, most people watching on phones, tablets, laptops, or TikTok streams are probably going to think it sounds absolutely fine. But it is still a cheap condenser mic, which means that if your room's echoey, your keyboard's noisy, you've got a phone running, or traffic outside the window, it's going to pick up all of it. And honestly, I think that's probably the first part of this setup most people would eventually want to upgrade. Cheap condenser mics are very good at hearing things you didn't want anyone else hearing. After spending some time with this thing, I honestly don't think it's aimed at traditional podcast people at all. I think it's really aimed at music, live streamers, karaoke creators, TikTok singers, casual performers, and people doing interactive live content. Because suddenly all the effects, the routing, the monitoring, the backing track features start making a lot more sense. And weirdly enough, once you stop expecting this to behave like a normal beginner podcast setup, I actually think the whole thing becomes much easier to understand. Now, for live stream performers and music creators, this makes a lot more sense. So where do I come down on this thing overall? Honestly, it's much better once you stop thinking of it as a beginner podcast kit, because a simple plug-in USB microphone setup, I think there are easier and cleaner options now. But as a weird little all-in-one box for live stream music, karaoke, backing tracks, audience interaction, and casual performance streaming, well, I can actually see the appeal there. And to be fair, for the money, there's a surprising amount of functionality packed into it. You just need to go into it understanding what it actually is and what it definitely isn't. So if you do want to check this thing out for yourself, I'll put the Amazon link down below in the description. And honestly, if you're the kind of person who enjoys live streaming music, experimenting with effects, messing around with backing tracks and building live interactive content, well, this thing probably makes a lot more sense than the standard podcast setup does. I still think there are clearer options for pure voice recording. But for creative live stream performance stuff, yeah, I can absolutely understand why people buy these.